Hello and welcome to Rights and Recourse, a program that tackles issues affecting your rights and matters of legal recourse. My name is Dumile Matez. Remember, you can also be part of our discussion today by tweeting us at Rights Recourse or calling our studio line on 011 714 5497 or 5498. Alternatively, email your thoughts to Rights and Recourse at sabc.co.za. The concept of a tax ombudsman was first floated in South Africa in the third interim report of the Cats Commission in 1995, which recommended that, I quote, while the role of the public protector as ultimate watchdog over taxpayer and other rights should be recognized and encouraged strongly, the underlying foundation of trust between taxpayers and the authorities would be better served by a more direct mediatory role of a tax ombudsman or an adjudicator, along the lines of the United Kingdom, for example, unquote. In 2013, the Minister of Finance appointed retired High Court Judge Justice Bernard Ngwepe as the first tax ombudsman. Today on Rights and Recourse, we take a hard look at the role and mandate of the tax ombudsman as envisaged by the Tax Administration Act No. 28 of 2011.
The South African taxpayer's rights when dealing with the South African Revenue Services emanate from the Bill of Rights, which is contained in our Constitution. Sadly, millions of law-abiding citizens do not know their tax right when dealing with SARS officials. It's also unfortunate that some SARS officials are also at times not mindful of the rights that taxpayers have under the current tax laws. Delays in income tax refunds, unaccountable and wasteful government spending, tender fraud and corruption have necessitated the need for greater intervention from the tax ombudsman. What was the reason for the establishment of the tax ombudsman's office?
The credibility of SARS and the success of the Ombuds office will depend on how SARS handles complaints. This is not only a matter of how we handle an individual complaint, it is more importantly about the system by which we recognize, treat, and report on complaints. It is also about how complaints are treated as a way of improving the quality of our work as a whole.
Today on Right and Recourse, we examine the following: the role of the tax ombudsman, what processes must be followed when lodging a tax grievance, how much does it cost, and what is the time frame for a hearing? Government spending is out of control, and are we heading for a tax revolt? Mbali Madigwa for Right and Recourse.
Well, joining us today on today's topic are Advocate Eric Mkawane, Chief Executive Officer from the Office of the Tax Ombudsman, and Professor Keith Engel, Deputy Chief Executive Officer from the South African Institute of Tax Practitioners. Gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to Rights and Recourse.
Thank you, Jamal.
Thank you.
Let's go straight to the meat, Mr. Mkawane. Yes. What is the role and mandate of the Office of the Tax Ombudsman?
The role of the tax ombud, perhaps I should start by indicating the need to define what an ombud is. An ombud is somebody that is independent, impartial, and that will deal with complaints coming from an organization, for example, and in this case, SARS. So two things are important in here. It's the fact that he has to be impartial and he has to be independent. And independent from the organization, I must say. So the role here, at the end of the day, is to try to adjudicate on issues affecting taxpayer, complaints that taxpayers raise, for example. So if they have a complaint and they bring it to our office, we need to review and address such complaints, and specifically the kind of complaints that are coming, which we are mandated to look at: service-related complaints, procedural matters, and administrative matters.
What gives the Office of the Ombudsman its legislative powers?
Well, there's a Tax Administration Act that was passed in 2011. That's the Tax Administration Act 28 of 2011, which came into effect in 2012. Now, in terms of specific section 14 of that Tax Administration Act, it provides that the minister must appoint a tax ombud, and further on it defines, what mandate that tax ombud will have, and also the limitations and the processes and the like.
Keith, we said it in the introduction that the tax ombudsman has its origins from a report that was crafted by one Michael Katz in 1997, 1995. Why did it take so long for the industry, I know, has been calling for a tax ombudsman? Why did it take so long for an ombudsman? You can answer part of that question, and Mr. Mkhawani can answer the rest of the question.
Look, I think it's a question of timing, because it's a question of process. In that time, in the late 90s, SARS was perceived as weak. So at that time, they were not collecting what they should be collecting. The organization wasn't working properly. So that was not a first priority. What happened in the 2000s under Pravin Gordon, we started to have better and better systems. Now, as SARS has gotten stronger, now the reverse complaint is not that it's too weak, it's too strong. And then SARS, to be fair, began making intermediary steps along the way. So I don't think it was part of a process, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, definitely was part of the process. And at that stage, the Joint Standing Committee on Finance remarked that why should we have a separate body? There was a public protector that could be utilized. So if you had a complaint, you could still utilize the office of the public protector. So in as
many
much
would say
as
that's a blessing in disguise, because the public protector is overwhelmed by the work she has.
Definitely overwhelmed by the amount of work that she has. But one must also bear in mind that there was capacity issue. You needed to, they said you can build capacity within the public protector's office to be able to deal with complaints of a tax nature. But as you look, SARS, on the other hand, was trying to build capacity to be able to deal with its own complaints, and hence the establishment of the SSMO back in 2002. But obviously the problem with that is that, it was an office that reported to the commissioner directly. Even though it reported to the commissioner directly, it lacked the independence. Because according to the public, they must look at, they really have credibility in an institution that can remove the bias, perception of bias, and the perception of corruption, perception that, people can generate their own kind of reports. That would be
I want to go back to something you said. You said people can raise complaints on issues or administrative issues. What kind of administrative issues are these?
If you look at some of the complaints, I'll just give an example. If a person lodges an objection, and SARS takes
an objection
too
to
long,
an assessment.
To an assessment, SARS takes too long to finalize that objection. So administratively, that is not correct. They must deal with a complaint within a specified period, as set out in the regulations pertaining to the handling of objections. So if they take, for example, 4 months, and the prescribed period may be shorter than that, they can approach our office, for example, to say, I've lodged an objection. SARS has not handled this within the stipulated time period. So if they do that, they don't finalize the objection within a specified time period, administratively, they've not followed, they've not done the right thing.
Keith, the industry I know wanted the ombudsman have much wider powers than the powers that have been given to the ombudsman.
No, look, I think we've had an evolution because it was under the Service Monitoring Office. People complained it was under SARS and should be under Treasury. Now that it's under Treasury, they're complaining they want it to be under Parliament. So to be fair, there's always a bit of a complaint. But I think part of the problem is what do people want from the institution? So when you're looking at it, there are two kinds of problems that come up. One is operational, and one is a matter of policy. So when you're talking about operational issues, and that's what SARS has been working on, is that things that SARS knows is a problem they're trying to fix operationally, they want to fix. So they've tried different things. They've had you could call somebody and they would be there for taxpayer queries. Then they had the monitoring. We can try to get our house under control. The question is, once we can't get our house under control anymore, now we're going to take it to ombudsman. And that was kind of what was being perceived by SARS. But there's a second streak that's in there, is that there's a number of times people feel that maybe the rules are being applied, but they're being applied aggressively with a slight level of unfairness. And that's where you see a bit of tension where the ombud can get involved, because the rules are the rules. The law is the law, and that's passed by Parliament.
Do you want to add to that quickly before we go to the break?
No, I can't.
Are you happy with Keith's explanation? Because we're going to go to many other issues that you raised,
Yes.
especially the independence and the impartial. And also, we would also like to get into, when we come back, I want us to get into how do I place a complaint to the ombudsman? And there's a whole rigmarole that you have to go through. It's not as easy as we think it is. If you'd like to join us on today's discussion, please call us on 011 714 5497 or 5498, or tweet us at Rights and Recourse, or email us at Rights and Recourse. Probably talk to us about our programs that we have done before on Rights and Recourse at sabc.co.za. We'll be back after the break.
Then you're not sure, and then you have to be quick, and then, it always balances that out.
Welcome back as we continue our discussion on the tax ombudsman. Mr. Mkawane, the other question I want to know is, how do I place a complaint with the tax ombudsman?
We have drafted a complaints form, which is available on the website. There's a complaints guide also available on the website, and for those who would want to understand or have difficulties with English, we have it in all 11 official languages, that complaints guide. So one can either access that complaints form on the website, or even phone our office, for example, and request it, or email to our office and request the complaints form. We can always make it available. And in some instances, some taxpayers feel that they want to come to the office, and they walk in, and we do assist them. We draw the complaints form, and we do assist them with the completion thereof.
But it's not as cut and dry, Keith, as we are saying, because you first start somewhere. You start with SARS before you go to the ombudsman, because the ombudsman is the gate of last resort, if I may say so.
Right. It is the gate of last resort, and that was designed to be. So the bottom line is, SARS should try to fix its own house. the question, there's some issues about how long does it take to get to the Ombudsman's office. But you don't want the Ombudsman coming there first, unless that's what you want. Do you want them coming there first? When do you want them coming? I'll let you answer that question. Yes. Your eyes moved.
Yes. Yes, I mean, there are cases, for example, that can come straight to our office without having to go through SARS. The Act provides that, you know, before anybody approach our office, they must exhaust all the SARS internal processes. So they must have lodged a complaint with SARS, and SARS must have failed to resolve their complaint. But the Act specifically provides that there is an exception to that. That if there are compelling circumstances, somebody can come directly to us, and in that regard, it also defines what kind, you know, of circumstances we'll look at. For example, if somebody is facing financial hardship, for example, it may be, and they're awaiting a refund, and SARS is holding back on the refund. So if they are to follow the process of exhausting all the SARS internal processes, it may be too late by the time they get a resolution. So the Act specifically foresaw that possibility and made provision for that people can approach our office if they have compelling circumstances.
Let's take a normal complaint. How long would a normal complaint take, for instance? Looks like this is a very long process.
It's not a long process. If a person raises an issue, say for example the branch office of SARS, or they've gone to the contact center, they've waited for the period allocated for that complaint to be finalized, and SARS still has failed to deal with that complaint or resolve the issue. They can then approach our office because they have raised it with SARS, and SARS has they have not resolved it within the specified time period, and then they can come to our office. We can deal with that complaint. Now, in some instances, people do go all the way to the SSMO, for example. And
could you explain the SSMO? I know
that's a SARS.
The SARS Service Monitoring Office.
That's the SARS Service Monitoring Unit. That's the office that I referred to, which was established back in 2002, which was meant to monitor the service within SARS. But it actually reported to SARS, and it still remained within SARS.
Did the Ombudsman's office take over the functions, the roles and functions of the tax court, or do we still have a tax court?
We still have the tax court. The tax court is there. Our mandate, as you have explained what the mandate will deal with service-related issues, procedural-related issues, and administrative issues. Now, there is the Act also provides, it gives us limitations. We cannot deal with issues, for example, that are...
Of policy.
Policy issues. Policy issues, matters where, you know, the taxpayer has objected, specifically when it deals with the merits of the objection. But the administrative nature of that objection, we can address. It talks about the legislation, for example. We cannot review a complaint relating to legislation, so we cannot deal with that. But issues that are before the courts, we cannot deal with at all. It's outside our mandate.
Just a point. I mean, one of the things that I think it's important, I think you're alluding to it, is
that... Probably I should ask you to raise your voices a little bit.
Sorry. I mean, the point is when you look at the system, there's a number of checkpoints. This is only one of them. So your first checkpoint is the taxpayer call centers within SARS itself. Once you go beyond that, I believe in most cases, not in all cases, you're going to be going to the monitoring office. Then you move on to the tax ombudsman, or sometimes it's an emergency, as you stated, you go there first. Then there's the final level, which now you start going to the courts, because the courts are completely independent and they have the power to override SARS. Now that could be on procedural issues as well as policy issues. So really there's a whole stream of things. And not even talking about ombudsman, but there's also the question of what's the other role. So while the ombudsmen are there, they're there because they're tax experts. So they understand the problem, they know whether it's legit or not. But your representative can also go. The political people are out there. The problem is they don't have the skills to know what the real problem is. So it should be viewed as a whole plethora of remedies.
Is that the case, Mr. Mkhawane?
That is the case. if we unpack that, for example, and we go further, the issues that come to the office, for example, those are issues that of a service nature, procedure and the like. But then you have the real legal dispute. Those ones fall outside our mandate. Now, issues, once there's an objection, we cannot deal with the merits of the objection. So if the taxpayer is not happy with the outcome of the objection, they can go to appeal, for appeal, and then it may end up in the tax court. Now, that falls outside. The merits of the, maybe the merits of the dispute in that regard fall squarely outside our mandate.
Let's in the last 5 minutes that we have, let's take this call from the Northwest. Tini, good afternoon and welcome to Rights and Recourse. What's your question? Hello, Tini.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. What's your question?
I am glad that I can talk to you.
Yes, Tini, go ahead.
Man, I've got a bit of a problem. I'm waiting for my refund more than 6 months already. And I've phoned more than 10 times. And every time they're telling me it's with the auditors or I must wait for another 60 days or whatever. What must I do?
Thank you, Tini. It does happen that after an assessment is made, for instance, I go to the office in Randburg, and when the assessment is made, all that stuff is pushed through to Alberton. And I have to wait for the Alberton office, but they do have a number that you can call. But Tini has been waiting for over 10 months or 6 months.
6 months.
Look, there's a specified period. I mean, obviously, SARS also has its own challenges, where some people think that they can turn it into a cash cow and make fraudulent refunds. That happens. Now, they obviously need to guard against, the fiscus losing money in that way. Now, on the other hand, it does not justify too much delay. Now, we have, there's a common complaint that come to our office, where SARS has taken too long to resolve or refund the person. Now, we do deal with this kind of complaints. So it falls squarely within our mandate. We can. It's a service-related issue. So SARS has to, even with those challenges, has to make sure that it provides proper feedback to the taxpayer or even resolve the matter. So if they are not able to resolve, the taxpayer is able to approach us and lodge a complaint. And then we investigate.
Let's take this other call from Joel in Gauteng. Joel, good afternoon and welcome to Rights and Recourse.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm all right, man.
What's your question?
My problem is with tax. I've been waiting for my refund. It's about 5 months already.
Joel is waiting for his for about 5 months now. Probably you guys should submit your complaints to Mr. Mkawane here so that he takes them with him.
Yes, we have a number of those kind of complaints. We do actually attend to them. And where there are challenges, obviously SARS may be able to indicate that there are challenges. But let me just also add, which is something that is, gives us a bit of strength. We have access to all the SARS systems. So when a complaint comes in, we are able to verify, we are able to check exactly whether this complaint is a proper complaint, and exactly even, we can even tell exactly what happens on the SARS side, unless it's a factual issue, which we may not know. But we have access to all the systems, so we are able to investigate thoroughly. Before we even approach SARS, we can tell that maybe here there are issues, or SARS here has done wrong, and in which case we can make a recommendation to SARS to say, SARS, it's time, you have exceeded this time limits, refund the taxpayer, and you perhaps need to make an apology.
Is it right, am I right, but the majority of these issues have to do with VAT and rather than personal income
Most of them
tax?
were. I was about to say that. I think VAT is really the big issue, is because the VAT really is supposed to be a custodian kind of relationship. When the business pays VAT, unless it's directly at the end user like yourself and like me, that VAT should be in and out very, very quickly. And that has become a very emotional issue, not just in South Africa, but Africa as a whole. South Africa's record on paying back refunds is better. But it's difficult for revenue services to give out refunds. They don't really enjoy that. But when you look at the systems, there are really two views. One of them is that sometimes, and to be fair, sometimes I've gotten refunds very, very quickly. Other times have been slower. The question is there something been flagged? So sometimes something's been flagged and you don't know it on the computer. So you have, for the average individual, for example, doesn't necessarily check.
We'll continue this discussion, sure, Keith, when we come back from a break. If you'd like to join us, you can do likewise, as Teeny and Jules has done. Phone us here. Mr. Mkawana is here. He will respond to your questions on the spot. You can call us on 714-5497 or 5498. Stay with us. Welcome back. As we continue our discussion on the Tax Ombudsman's Office, let's first take this call from Victor from Zanines. Victor, good afternoon and welcome to Rights and Recourse.
Yes, bro. How are you, Mr.?
Well, thanks. How are you?
I'm good, man. You know, I've got a problem in terms of this refund on taxes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, the thing is, you find that they say maybe you owe the taxpayers. When you go there, they say to you, you are actually, let's say you got something like about 4 years or 3 years without submitting your tax return. And then in terms of my understanding, I'm sure the taxpayers were supposed to be actually owing you a certain amount. All of a sudden, you are told that, no, you cannot get whatever you were supposed to get because you didn't submit your tax return. And you didn't submit your tax return on that particular period. Maybe in 2 years' time, and then you actually go a long way with submitting your tax return. But all of a sudden, you have actually forfeited those 4 years you didn't actually submit. But at the end of the day, you are told that you cannot actually get your refund. But if ever you were owing SARS, they are going after you. They will be actually going after you, looking for you to pay the actual amount you owe. Can you actually let me go through there and then tell me what's going on?
Well, thank you very much, Victor. Victor is saying something. What Victor is saying probably, it could be very difficult for SARS to make a determination as to how much Victor should be paid or how much Victor owes if Victor has not submitted any returns.
This, without looking at the specifics, it may be difficult to respond to that. I think he can approach SARS to give a full explanation as to why. And if he's not satisfied, then he can approach our office, for example. Now, it's very difficult to respond to such questions, you know, when one doesn't have full facts, or without applying his mind, you know, to the full facts.
What's difficult too is sometimes the taxpayer makes a mess up of it. for various reasons. And then you sort of fall out of the system. And SARS is in a difficult situation. If you haven't filed your returns, do you owe more money? So is that refund, are you actually entitled or not? If they don't have the facts, how do they know?
Let's take this call, Keith, from Raymond. I don't know if it's from Senegal in the Free State or Senegal in West Africa. Raymond, good afternoon and welcome to Rights and Recourse.
Good afternoon.
Yes, Raymond, what's your
I'd
question?
like to mention I've been complaining for the last 3 years. When you go to the office, in other words, to do your tax and that, they just tell you to sign. They should actually check it for you, because luckily I went with my daughter last year, right? And they said to her, sign it. I said, actually, you should first check it. They said, sign it, it's right. Then what happened is, they turned around and said she has to pay over 500 rand. I said, a lot of nonsense. I know how to do the taxes. You've done it wrong. They had a look at it. They said, no, they made a mistake. They owe her over 2,000 rand. You with me? So what happened is, they said they have to now scan it. They have to be audited. They can't fix it up. It must be sent to their head office, Bloemfontein. Okay. So what happened is, I went back 10 days because I wasn't happy with him. And I went in, they said, but you must have authority because it's not yours. I said, right, fine. I went to the police station. I filled in the forms that they give you. The police signed it. I went
Yes,
back,
Raymond, okay,
and they turned around
Raymond.
And they said he did not scan it.
Okay, Raymond.
It took her 4.5 months to get that money.
Okay, we got you now. It's a time it takes for them to come back to you with an assessment. And first of all, he says, I go there to the office. He's from Senegal in the Free State, and because I heard he mentioned Bloemfontein. So he goes to Bloemfontein, to the Bloemfontein office, goes there and they say, sign here. Surely they can't just say, sign here.
Well, I mean, SARS does have people who will assist taxpayers when they come in to have their forms or submitting their returns. So they do assist them, yes. Sometimes, yes, it does happen that, the person who's assisting may be giving out or completing incorrectly. It has happened, in the past. We've found a situation where taxpayers said, look, but I went to SARS, this is how they completed, and with their help, but there was an error. But we have been able to attend to those kind of complaints because it's service related. They did not serve the taxpayer correctly.
It would seem Raymond also has a problem of the time it takes for an assessment to be made.
Bearing in mind, well, from where we come from, back those years it will take many months before the e-filing was introduced and all those, the modernization that SARS underwent. But now, if you submit, you're supposed to get your assessment. You can get your assessments within 3 seconds or a couple of seconds, instead of those years when you would wait for a year or more to get an assessment. We don't know what the circumstances are in this regard. If he really needs to get clarity or he has an issue, he can even communicate with our office. They can explain better.
The real thing too is that how much is an obligation for SARS to do your taxes? You have to do your own tax preparation. Now that's why you hire attorneys and accountants to do that for you. Now SARS has moved away, and he's actually implying that. They used to have an assessment system that SARS assessed you. Now we're moving toward a self-assessment system. You do the work, and then SARS crunches the numbers, and once you put it in, you get a pretty quick response if you're doing 3 filing.
Yes.
The problem is if you're outside of that system because you're doing it through paper or you've made a mistake, then things start to slow down. And that's why sometimes, to be fair to the office, sometimes the problems are twofold, and it's a communication breakdown between them. But I have had the unfortunate circumstance where a SARS person has advised me wrongly, but they did remedy it at the end of the day.
I wanted to move on to something else, but first of all, let's take this call from Sarah from Cape Town. Sarah, good afternoon and welcome to Rights and Recourse.
Hi, good afternoon, Dumile.
Yes, Sarah, what is your question?
Dumile, I would like to know who is actually entitled to get a tax refund? Because I've been submitting ever since I've been working, and I've never received a tax refund. I would like to know who's entitled. And then my second question is, I would also like to know, does the revenue office come out to the communities to educate the communities about tax, because I'm a community development worker, and I would like the community should get this information. Some of the people in the community don't understand how does the tax affairs work. So do they come out and facilitate and do workshops to the community to educate them?
First, thank you very much, Sarah. Thank you very much, Sarah. Keith, I wanted to take the first question. The first question has to do with who gets a refund. Obviously, you can't get a refund if you have not overpaid. And then, Mr. Mkawana, I wanted to take the last question as to who is responsible for educating the public regarding the work of the tax ombudsman. I think that we should make it very clear that we are actually saying, let's talk about the issues pertaining to how do I complain and what do I complain about to the tax ombudsman. I see everybody is talking about their returns, their refund and all of that. Mr. Keith, can you take the first question?
I'll just take it quick on the refund. Theoretically, if you do it right, you're not supposed to get a refund. You don't want SARS to hold your money longer than you should. That's your money. But a lot of people view refunds as a little bonus check. Very popular back in the United States, where people actually they pay way too much tax because they don't want the Revenue Service auditing them. So they want to be safe from the Revenue Service, and they also use it as a savings tool or a vacation or a little bonus. But that's not how you're supposed to use it. So if you're not getting a refund, maybe you shouldn't have one, and maybe you're actually better off, even though it doesn't feel that way.
Mr. Mkawane?
Well, should I take the second?
Take the second question,
okay.
the question of who is responsible for educating the public about the work of the ombudsman.
We are ultimately responsible, the office itself, and also, it's set out in the Act that we must educate people. This being a new office, we know that there's still a big challenge. We've been to various provinces. We just appointed a communications person about 5 months ago. And, in the process, we are running around the country. The responsibility is for us to be able to educate the taxpayers. Rights will be useless unless people know about those rights.
Those rights.
Yes.
You have offices in all the provinces.
So far, we still have an office in Pretoria. So we embarking on we're drawing up a program for a year to be able for outreach programs that we've drafted, and we started also with the tax practitioners, the likes of SAICA. We went around and said. We involved with the tax practitioners, and we make sure that they're members as well.
Yeah, get to know. I want to go back to an issue that I've always wanted to ask you, especially regarding the industry, the sides and the sidecar. There's a great deal of skepticism around the office of the ombudsman from the industry, especially regarding its independence. You mentioned earlier that it's independent and impartial, especially regarding its independence. The bone of contention is the fact that it is reporting to the minister, and it resides at SARS headquarters. Is that right?
No. It does not reside at SARS headquarters in the first place. It's a standalone office.
Across the road from SARS?
Not across the road from SARS. It's actually some kilometers away from SARS. The further we stay away from SARS, the better. Because yes, we are aware of the fact that when people see you being close,
let's keep that thought for now, and when we come back from the break, we then will answer that question. You can still call us here and write a recourse as we discuss the office of the tax ombudsman on 011 714 5497 or 5498, or tweet us at Rise Recourse. You can email us at riseandrecourse@sabc.co.za. Stay with us. Welcome back to Rights and Recourses. We discuss the Office of the Tax Ombudsman. Let's go back to that question about independence. Probably tied up with a comment I picked up in my research from Etienne Retief, Chairman of the National Tax and Stakeholders Committee, CIPA, who said the Act does not give the Ombudsman real teeth.
Okay. First of all, when you talk of independence, we report to the Minister. Yes, we are a creature of statute, so whatever the statute says. And I must emphasize one aspect, that the drafters of the legislation, they looked at the international best practices. And in here, our legislation is almost similar to what is in Canada. So there's similar concept, reporting to the Minister, and Minister also tabling an annual report before Parliament. So our activities, we don't report to the Commissioner. We do not report to the Commissioner. We answer to
I think what the industry
Minister.
is saying, Mr.
Yes.
Mkawane,
Yes.
the industry is saying it would be better if the Ombudsman's office was reporting to Parliament rather than to the Minister. We've seen what happened during the week to people who report to a Minister.
Look, it's the test of the pudding, really, is what really comes out. When people who have been to the office, and if you can look at our annual report, the way we report, which is available on the website, it indicates the kind of complaints that we received. Yes, we do accept that we still report to the Minister, but this is not, our system is actually even better than what they have in Canada. Better than the UK, where in the UK, for example, the equivalent of the tax ombud reports to the Commissioner.
Let's take this call. Let's take this call from Molifi in Gauteng. Molifi, good afternoon and welcome to Rights and Recourse.
Good afternoon, and how are you?
Well, thanks, how are you?
Fine. I just want to find out how will the Ombudsman help me in this case.
Yes.
There was a fraud happened on my account, 2010. And then the commissioner from SARS visited me. In fact, I was informed by the commissioner. And then he made me sign an affidavit because he told me that there's a case going on about this fraud, you see. There have been many people who have been defrauded about this e-filing. Now, there was a fraud of 180,000 on the account. The problem is that the case is still going on, and SARS is calling me about the amount, and I faxed everything to them, telling them that the commissioner from SARS said that no, if there's any problem, I should give you this affidavit. Now, there's a percentage, apparently every month, that's been added on that amount. And yet the case is not yet finalized. Apparently the case is in Limpopo or something like that.
Okay, thank you very much, Molifi.
I would like to find out how can the Ombudsman help
Office
me
of the
with this?
Ombudsman help you? Let us go there. Mr. You heard Molifi explaining his case. Obviously, I think SARS is going through what we referred to earlier as the SSMO.
I think there's if you can just look at the complaints guide and look at the form, complete the form, set out the full details, so we can be able to examine the particular issue. We cannot obviously respond now, but he needs to complete the form and then he can forward it to us so we can investigate.
I wonder if we had exhausted the issue of independence, Keith. I don't think we exhausted
I don't think we
had not.
Yes. Just let me defend you a little bit, if that's okay. Because you're a good guy. Don't worry. I mean, I think the point is, people were complaining before because when it was under SARS, they said there's no independence. It goes to Treasury. There is independence. The bottom line is you do a parliamentary report, don't you?
Yes.
And Parliament sees that report.
Yes.
And let me say that people at SARS don't like seeing negative stuff on the report. They don't want to see that. It's not something you want to deal with. So to be fair, those have quite a bit of an implication right there. That's why they're trying to resolve it internally so it doesn't get to that point. But there's also, again, one of the questions is what do we want from the tax ombudsman? One is an element of at what stage do we want them to intervene? Do we want them to be taxpayer education? Do we want you to have them helping you right at the very beginning? And there are other things that can be done. So we really have to decide how big we want this organization to be. And that costs money and it costs more effort. And perhaps if SARS can remedy its own situation, that's good. We also, our organization, before they come to you, they also can come to us. And we can deal with SARS. We're really just trying to resolve everything amicably here. And procedural issues, the real problem what's happened in SARS is that what they did is they mechanized. They went to electronic, which was great. Overall, it's a far better system than we had before. But sometimes it can seem impersonal.
You say SARS is mechanized. I think you heard what Molifa was saying. The fraud that he's talking about took place through this mechanization, took place through e-filing.
There are some fraud going on, and that question is where. There is, we do get picked up noises about fraud, and people know how to play with the system, but they knew how to do a lot more when it was paper. But still, fraud is fraud, and somebody's always trying to breach the system wherever possible.
Well, we are going to continue discussing this issue, the Office of the Ombudsman in South Africa, the Tax Ombudsman in South Africa, as we can join us and call us on 011 714 5497 or 5498, or tweet us at Recourse. And don't go away, we'll be back right after this. Welcome back. We're still on the issue of the independence of the Ombudsman's office. Probably you can tie that up with this question. The recommendation of the Ombudsman are just recommendations and nothing else.
Okay. The issue of independence is a thorny one. People don't appreciate the fact that, first of all, we are accountable to the minister, and we do, on an annual basis, we prepare a report. That report will set out exactly what our office has done and the complaints that have come to our office. So we report on serious issues that were faced by taxpayers. So we list those issues. Where we made recommendations, and for example, and SARS did not implement such recommendations, those recommendations will be spelled out in the annual report. So the powers that are there in the sense that when we prepare this report, it goes to the minister. The minister tables it before
we seem to be we'll be going on this issue of independence. Just let's hold that matter for now. Yes. Let's take this call from Owen from Nelspruit. Owen, good afternoon and welcome to Rights and Recourse.
Hi, thanks for taking my call, Dumile. You know, our government is very good in terms of promulgating all these laws. When you look at them, on face value, they are very good, just like the public protector. But one day you will be hearing the president sitting in parliament giggling about it just being the recommendation and whatnot. It doesn't do anything at all. It looks good. This ombudsman, I can see him, like you said, they are sitting across the road and he said few kilometers. It's just one and they say across SARS. The thing is, at the end of the day, we need something that will bite. Not these things that will just look good on paper, but it doesn't bite. If SARS doesn't do anything good to the citizens, we need something that will bite SARS, so that SARS must do something to citizens. It must not just be an ombudsman that will keep the president giggling and those officials happy and whatever.
Thank you, Owen. Thank you, Owen. Thank you very much. Owen goes back to the issue I raised earlier, that the recommendations are just recommendations and they are not binding. That's what it says. And also, the other question that I want you to take up with that is the fact that if, therefore, the recommendations are not binding, why are we not necessarily going to court? Why don't we just go to court and not go to the Ombudsman?
We must just bear in mind that when we say not binding, the recommendations are not binding. Obviously, the recommendations may go either way. It may go against SARS, it may go in favor of SARS. And
Either
against
way,
the
they are not
taxpayer.
binding.
Either way, they are not binding, because by so doing, you are closing the door for either party. Now, the fact that they are not binding does not mean that there's no power in that. I was trying to explain the fact that these recommendations, whatever we recommend and SARS does not implement, will end up in the annual report, which gets tabled before Parliament, and which the necessary committee or the relevant committee may be questioning SARS, for example. How come
the Standing Committee on Finance?
Yes, and then they may be questioning SARS, how come you're not implementing this recommendations? So that's an explanation that SARS may have to make to that committee. But judging by the outcomes, the cases that we've reviewed so far, I'll give you an example. I mean, in the first 6 months, we reviewed the cases, and 80% of them went against SARS. So it was in favor of the taxpayer, and 20% only were in favor of SARS. And now when you look at the subsequent period, the first 9 months of this financial year, they were going, for that matter, it was even 89% in favor of the taxpayer and 11% in favor of SARS. So judging by those, you can tell whether we are just a mere bluff or not. And people who have come through our office have made so many complimentary messages, giving us thank you messages, you know, for the outcomes of the matters.
I think I want to go back to another issue here. The industry also believes that there has been a decay in tax morality as a result of the draconian nature of tax collection. We've heard recently what's happening at SARS around tax collection, and prompted by tough tax collection targets, and as well as the irresponsible manner in which this is done, and the irresponsible way the money is used, our money is used. Would the Office of the Ombudsman express its views on these and other issues in the report?
Look,
or can the office express its views on these reports?
I must say, remember that the tax ombud is a creature of statute with the mandate which is defined by the Act. So if any aspect, if it falls within that mandate, we are able to express an opinion if it falls within the mandate. So if it does not fall within the mandate, we are excluded, we cannot. I mean, it doesn't matter who it is and what the nature of the issue is, but as long as it falls within our mandate, we can express an issue.
Also, Keith, if you can come in here, I would imagine the Office of the Ombudsman can also gauge, because of the kind of complaints they deal with, they can also gauge the level of disgruntlement of the taxpayers. For instance, I read in the Financial Mail this week talk of a tax revolt. Can the Ombudsman put those kind of things in the report?
Look, if the tax revolt, I think it's an issue that may have to be addressed by SARS, for example. But if we pick up from the kind of complaints that are coming through, we can indicate. If it's within our mandate, it comes, and we can comment on that. We can, in fact, we do on a quarterly basis, send certain reports to the Commissioner, just to indicate to the Commissioner, look, this is what your officials are doing at SARS, and for example. Now, if they are, we indicate, just like we do with the annual report, we indicate some of the serious issues on a quarterly basis to the Commissioner for his attention to, and to also for him to be able to address those shortcomings.
The other issue, I don't know whether you wanted to say something in that regard.
I think one of the issues that, look, they're not a political body. They're really an arbitration body. So to the extent that people are getting more emotional in their complaints, it's something that probably will be taken up quietly with the minister or with the commissioner and even Parliament. But one of the things that does have to be done, not just the Ombudsman's Office, but organizations like ourselves, is really a survey on what is happening. And a lot of times we do see a rise in anecdotal complaints. And part of the reason why is if you take a look at SARS, they've been required to up their targets. Now, many SARS, are very responsible and they get the right thing. Other times they don't. The problem is whoever's getting hit will always feel it's wrong. So you really need to have an independent study of what is going on out there. But there is a mood, and that mood is, it's getting more, a lot of people say we're at a tipping point.
Mr. Mkawane, you can have a final word and make our people aware and say your doors are open, they can come in any time and come with their complaints. And probably in that, how many complaints have you heard in the last year?
In the first 6 months, we had about 150 because we were not known. About 670 people made contact with our office. But that was in the first 6 months, bearing in mind we're establishing this from the onset, this office from the onset. But currently we're standing at probably about 6,000 people who have made contact with our office. Because, and I want to add that about 600 complaints have so far been dealt with and finalized. Now, the issue also is not, the more the complaints, it's not an indication of any issue, but it's just that now people get to know about our office. And it's, and we want to say that the office is there. If you have a complaint of any nature and against SARS, and SARS has not been able to address that, you can contact our office. We have a toll-free number. We have consultants who are there to give and advise. There's a website which is also available, which you can also go to just check how to lodge a complaint.
Well, that's it. We've come to the end of this program, this show this afternoon. This has been Rights and Recourse. This program is repeated at 10 tonight and 5 tomorrow morning. Thank you to our guests and good afternoon.